Welcome to Plug and Play. We got Dan Macdonald, iHeartRadio, host of CKLW AM 800, 50,000 watts, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
That's me.
That's you, and thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for letting me record you.
Thank you, anytime. Well, thanks everyone for having me here tonight. This is really cool. I wish I had something like this when I was in the 90s. We just sat around and drank and got stoned and tried to come up with ideas. That's what we did in the 1990s. It wasn't a big community like there is right now, but it's really, really great to be here. Like you said, I'm on AM 800 CKLW, and I've been there for 4 years now, which is wild. I've been in radio for 23 years. The biggest question I always get asked is how did you start out in radio? And it's so funny, that question. It was reminded of a roundtable this morning. I do a roundtable every morning on the air where I invite members of the community to come on the show, and we talk about various events that are going on. It can be heavy, they can be light, and I always tell whoever's going to be on the show, go as deep or as light as you want. Like, you're live on the radio, so whatever you say, the stronger your opinion, the stronger the reaction you're going to get from people. So your comfort level, if you want to laugh and say something funny, that's cool. If you want to dive in and really give your opinion, go for it. But this morning we had Ryan Richardson, who's right over there, who has a great podcast called the Go Tell Someone podcast. He was on the show, along with a good friend of mine, Kristen Siapis, who's a big community member, advocate. She ran for counselor in Ward 4 this year. She was on, and she is known, I'm going to preface this whole story with what she said this morning. She's known for doing these sidewalk chalk messages, where every morning she writes some kind of inspirational message. And she was saying on the air how they got so much traction, and she once wrote, "Take that leap" on the sidewalk. And she said she couldn't believe it. A friend of hers saw it, and just because they saw that message, they said, you know what, this is a sign from the universe, I'm going to take that leap. And they applied for this big, gigantic job that they weren't going to apply for, life-changing job, and they got it. And she's like, wow, like, because you saw my chalk sign, you made that decision and made that leap. It's crazy. And it got, when she was telling the story on the air, my head kind of rewound a bit, and I thought, wow, the question of how I got into radio, it is literally a series of insane snapshots and like right place, right time where I'm not going to do it. Sign for the universe, I'm going to do it, and then life-changing. So I'll rewind really, really quickly. I was always born and raised in Windsor. I always loved radio. My first passion was music, and what really turned me on to music in like the early 1980s, every kid my age was into like Madonna and Michael Jackson and Duran Duran and Cyndi Lauper. So I had all those records, and my mom noticed that like I loved music. Like for a 6-year-old, I really got into music. And she goes, hey, you know, I have a little Fisher-Price radio playing like Michael Jackson and Cyndi Lauper songs. And she goes, if you want, like you can go into mine and Dad's record collection and play some music from there. I thought, okay, cool. So I started going through the records, and it was like people like John Denver and Linda Ronstadt and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and people like that, Sonny and Cher, Dolly Parton. And I came across this one record. It was a collection of musicians. And I popped it on, and something in my head, like the chemistry went like, it was Bob Seger heavy music. And I'm not even really a particularly big Bob Seger fan, but it was Bob Seger heavy music. And something in my head went, whoa, like what is this? I need more of this. I need more of this in my life. And I fell in love with that compilation. And it was music like, it was James Brown, it was Tommy Rowe, it was the Shangri-Las, the Ronettes, and it was the CKLW Solid Gold vinyl record collection. There was a couple of them. I had no idea what CKLW was, and I just knew, oh, that was a big radio station we used to listen to. So that record kind of pushed me in a musical direction that other kids in my class just weren't going in, and I kind of became a little music nerd. And I still love the Madonna and the Prince and the Bangles and the B-52s, but I love this classic rock vibe too. So I got to know and understand music at a very early age. I was made fun of it quite often. Like, oh, who's Queen? Who's the Rolling Stones? Who are the Beatles? You like old music? And that was just something I thought I was stupid. I'm like, oh, I'm a loser. I like loser music. Like Beatles, loser music. Like, not a chance. So my obsession as a kid and as a teenager was music. Of course, radio, like we lived and died by the radio in the 1980s and 1990s. Not the way we do today. It's way, way different. You lived and died, you sat by the radio, and then there's some people of a certain age in here who will remember, if you were waiting for that one song, you put your cassette tape in the radio and you waited like this with your finger on the record button, and then when you heard it, like, oh, there it is, you hit record and you record your song, and you hope to God the DJ would shut up over the intro of the song so you could get a good cut of it. That was me. I lived and died by the radio. We have wonderful, radio in Windsor. Even people from Toronto, is there anyone here from Toronto? People from Toronto, they think they do everything better than us. Even they will say, Windsor has kick-ass radio because we have two cities. We have Windsor and Detroit. And CKLW, where I got that record from, that was the Big 8. Everyone thinks that Detroit sound was from Detroit. It was all Motown bands. It was broadcast out of Windsor. Like legendary, out of CKLW, out of Windsor. 50,000 watt blowtorch. It had the biggest reach in North America. So people like Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, Elton John would call up our station. Elton John calling up Rosalie Tremblay, who was the music director, and say, hey, Rosalie, I want to release a single. Do I release Benny and the Jets or Candle in the Wind? And she would say, Candle in the Wind. We got a Detroit audience. It sounds more urban. Save Candle in the Wind for later. And boom, that's how Elton John would pick his songs. Like mind-blowing stories right here. So we lived and died by the radio. 89X. I was a huge fan of 89X. I was a teenager in like 1992, so that's when like the grunge movement started. So as I approached high school and bought my first pair of Doc Martens, Pearl Jam and Nirvana and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Soundgarden were all breaking out. So it was almost like another radio revolution. We had the CKLW radio revolution with the Big 8, and 89X, same building, CIMX, was breaking all these amazing alternative rock bands that spoke to me in a huge way because I was like 14, I was that age. So radio was just so much to me. 99.5 The Fox, I love that station. 96.3, I'm not sure if anyone remembers Lisa. Anyone remember Lisa? She was like my idol to this day. I would love to meet Lisa one day. My first time on the radio was with Lisa. I was at a sleepover with some friends, and she was calling up saying, how much do you love me? Call in. So me and my friends called in a rap song that we wrote for Lisa, and she put us on the air, and that was like first time on the radio with Lisa. So anyways, I went to a high school, and I wanted to be a music journalist. I wanted to write about music. And go interview bands and go to shows. And I was going to a lot of shows. And at the time, they really pushed you to go into university. Like you weren't going to have much of a career unless you went to university. So I graduated grade 12 or OAC, and I thought, well, I guess I have to go to university. And they said, what are you going to take? And I said, I don't know. I'm good in English. Like that was the one thing that I was really excelled at. So I took English literature. And everyone's like, oh, you must want to be a teacher. I thought, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't know what I want to do. Like I have to take university, so I'll do what I'm good at. So when you looked at my marks in university, I partied very hard in university. That's a whole other chapter, though, that we're not going to get into today. I partied very hard. I went to a lot of shows. If you look at my transcripts in university, all my English and sociologies were A+. Everything else, I'm not kidding, F-. Like, when I liked something, I really liked something and put it all in. When I didn't like something, it was like, don't care, die, I don't care about you, it's gone. I compartmentalized a lot. So university wasn't really working out all that great for me. I had great marks in English, and I was going into my third year with failing half of my classes, and I thought, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I don't know what I'm even going to do when or if I ever graduate. I love reading Shakespeare, but I don't know how I'm going to transfer that to a job. All this time, too, I was still reading, going to shows, doing my thing that way. And a friend of mine said, well, why don't you go to journalism?
It's 8 o'clock.
And it's 8 o'clock, perfect. Are you keeping time officially? So I went into, my friend said, why don't you go into journalism? It's all the schools it's all the skills that you seem to have, writing, comprehension. She said, my boyfriend's a journalist. He writes for a small magazine. Now I thought, why did I never think of this before? The reason I didn't think of it is because back then, I don't know if it's still that way now, if you expressed that you wanted to go to college, it was looked down on a little bit, at least among the circles I was in. We had a tiered system in high school, basic, general, and advanced, and I was always pushed to go into advanced. I should have took general for a lot of things. I took advanced. And if you were in general, that meant you were going to college, and heaven forbid you went to college because you're just dooming yourself to a lifetime of horrible careers. So finally I said, well, of course journalism, my God. Why was I so afraid of the C word, college? Yes, I think I hung with my friend and called St. Clair College that day. It was June, near the end of my third year. And I said, hey, do you have any openings for journalism? And she said, yes, we do. Here's you have to do apply. Boom, I applied. See you later, university. I entered journalism, and a whole new world opened up. Like the minute I walked in, they gave us a placement at a newspaper. So I started writing for Lakeshore Times and LaSalle Post. I had this published work. I'm like, oh, this is finally my jam. And I got into CJAM, which is the University of Windsor's volunteer radio station. I started doing that as part of a placement there, and I was like, radio, this is amazing. Volunteer, didn't pay anything, but it was cool. So I was volunteering at CGM doing this show, and I was loving life. Still not quite sure how I was going to get a job out of this. The papers I was writing for didn't pay that great, and I thought, okay, this is cool, but where do we go from here? So last day of class, my friend had to like make up a bunch of projects because he was a big slacker, and one of his placements was a marketing placement. So he walked up to me and my good friend. We were walking just around the campus celebrating the last day of school, and he said, "Can I snap a photo of you two?" And I said, "No, not me. Like, I don't want to be in this." And my friend Martha's like, "Oh, fine, okay." So she sat there with my other friend. He snaps a photo, and she goes, "That's not, like, where's that going? That's not going to go anywhere." He goes, "No, it's for class. Don't worry about it. You're never going to see it. No big deal." Boom. Remember that moment, that snapshot. One little stupid snapshot. "Oh, I don't want to be in it. You do it." Snap. "Oh, okay." Anyway, I graduate, and I started writing for a couple independent magazines, Upfront Magazine and Room Magazine. I'm not sure if anyone remembers those. They were like independent, alternative magazines. I was the arts editor and music writer for those, feature writer. And the whole time I was doing CJAM 2 for free, 2 hours a week, just doing radio, not really thinking anything of it, just doing radio and having a blast. My parents were kind of like, "Well, Dan, you know, you gotta get an actual job because you're getting about $70 a story from these magazines. You're doing radio for free. How are you gonna make money?" I was a server and bartender too, and I was pretty happy doing that. I was like, "Well, I'm a good bartender and server, so I can pay the bills this way. This is great." I lived on my own, so it was fine. So I did that for a year, and then it was my birthday, and I had kind of fallen out of touch with some of my old college friends. And for my birthday, one of my college friends says, "Hey, a bunch of us are getting together. You want to come out for your birthday?" Yeah, sure. I went up for my birthday, and I saw that girl who had the picture snapped of her. And she was there. I'm like, "Oh my God, Martha, I haven't seen you in so long. This is amazing. What are you doing now?" I said, "I'm writing for a couple magazines. What are you doing?" She goes, "Oh, I work for AM 800, 89X, AM 580, and 93.9. I said, "No way. What are you doing there? That's crazy. Like, how? You're on the radio?" She goes, "No, I'm a writer." I thought, "Really? Writing for radio? What is that all about?" And she goes, "I'm writing commercials, ads, promos." I said, "How in the world did you get that? Did you start applying for these big wig?" It was Chum Radio at the time. You started applying for big Chum Radio gigs? How did you do this? And she goes, "No." She goes, "Remember that photo that they snapped of us that last day?" I said, "Yeah." Well, turns out, my friend had said, "Oh, don't worry, it's not going to go anywhere." Well, it ended up as like the college's promotional picture. So every like postcard, billboard, it was on like TV. Like her face was literally all over the city. She was like the face of St. Clair College, and she didn't even realize this. Her old boss, who she worked at a call center with in college, called her up and said, "Martha, I just got a postcard in the mail promoting St. Clair, and your face was on the cover." She said, What? He goes, "What are you doing? Are you doing modeling? Are you at St. Clair?" And she goes, "No, I graduated journalism." Journalism. Oh my God. Well, I am now the creative director of Chum Radio. "Do you have a job yet?" She said, "No, I don't." He goes, "Well, we're hiring writers." She applied. She got in because that guy snapped that photo. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had a chance. Wow. So then when I saw her at the birthday, she said, "And Dan, I've been there about 6 months now, and we're hiring." I thought, "You got to be kidding me." Okay, it was a mat leave. I go, "What do I need?" She goes, "Published work," which I had from college already, and writing for Upfront and doing all this stuff. Brought it in, and I got a job as a writer, and it was weird walking through that door, seeing Chum Radio and AM 800 and 89X. I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm walking through. This is amazing. I've never been in this building before." It was the weirdest, like, piece of, like, I felt like a jigsaw puzzle going into the right spot when I walked through those doors. I was like, something's gonna happen here. Like, and I kind of thought in my head, like, I was a big fan of the Lynn Martin show. She was the talk show host back then. I thought, I'm going to have that Lynn Martin show one day. I just know it. But first, we're going to be a writer. So I was a writer for a year. They now and then asked me to read ads, commercials that I would write if there was no announcers around to read them. So I'd say, "Yeah, I can read them." They're like, "Well, you do volunteer radio. I'm sure you can do this." I said, "Yeah." So I read a few ads. They said, "You sound really good." And I asked the program director of 93.9. It was called 93 on the River. Anyone remember the River at all?
Yeah.
Cool. It was 93 on the River. It was a really cool station. It reminded me a little bit of 89X back in the day. They played all those same grunge bands and stuff. So I was very, very drawn to that. And they played good new music too. So I asked the program director, Fat Matt. I said, "Hey," his name is Fat Matt. It's Fat Matt Franklin, but he goes by Fat Matt on the radio. And I said, "Hey, would it be cool if I wrote for you some blogs?" So I go to all of these shows. And he goes, "Well, how much do you want?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know if it's a paying job. I just want to do it. I want to write them and I want to put them somewhere." So he goes, "Well, if you're going to write them anyway, you can throw them on our website." So I started a little blog, just writing reviews, record reviews, stuff like that, interviewing some bands if I went to the show, interviewing them only on my own time, not getting paid for anything except exposure, which I know is a tricky thing for a lot of artists, but I was already working there anyway. So anyway, along comes an on-air position, and I didn't even remotely think of applying for it at the River. I'm like, no. I'm a writer. I'm just with CJAM. I do this for free. I could never be a bigwig sharing the airwaves. The same airwaves with people like Mike and Lisa and Lynn Martin and Christina, who did Time Warp, who I had this gigantic crush on because she was the coolest chick ever. Dave and Chuck the Freak were there. Vince Canova, he was like a huge idol of mine. All these classic radio people. There's no way I could have a spot next to all of them. So I didn't apply for it. Fat Matt, the program director, I heard through the grapevine, they're like, he's really ticked that you didn't apply for this job, the on-air job. I'm like, why would he be ticked? How could I ever be on the radio here? They're like, Dan, you clearly know the music. You're the only person in the building, including the DJs, who actually writes about the music. You know all this stuff. You go to all the shows more than the DJs do, and you've been doing radio for 4 years on CJAM. How are you not qualified? And I kind of paused and went, well, damn. Okay, I guess I could totally do this. So I'm like, but shit, I missed the deadline to apply. So she's like, go talk to him. So I went down in like the big office, like the music program director. I thought, hey, like the polite little timid, like, tap, tap, tap on the door, you know, like, he's like, yes. I'm like, I know I missed the deadline, but like, is there still a way for me to apply, or how did? He's like, yeah, just send me your demo. He was all playing it really cool. Send me your demo and I'll give it a listen. I'm like, okay, me trying to be cool to him, like, yeah, no problem, man. I'll send you my demo. Walk back upstairs. I'm like, oh God, Google how to make demo. I don't have a demo. Oh my God, I'm fake. They're gonna see right through me. So I made a little short 3 demo. I had all the equipment right there, radio equipment. So I went in the studio that I learned how to use by voicing commercials, and I made a little demo as if I was on the radio. So I picked 3 songs, like a Lenny Kravitz song, a Red Hot Chili Peppers song, and a Radiohead song, and I just back sold and front sold them. And I just told my stories. It was 3.5 minutes. Like, hey, that was Radiohead. I had a chance to see them in 1994 opening for Alanis Morissette. Who knew they'd open for Alanis Morissette? Another band coming to town, Red Hot Chili Peppers, right here on 93.9 The River. And I just did 3 little things like that, and that was it. Sent it in and went, okay, probably bombed the hell out of that. Like, how embarrassing that I just applied thinking I would ever be amongst these legends of radio. And day 1 went by, I heard nothing. Day 2 went by, I heard nothing. Day 3 went by, nothing. I'm like, yep. He hates it, I suck, and he doesn't know how to tell me because he thinks I'm nice and doesn't want to hurt my feelings. This is the internal dialogue I had in my head. I was like, I blew it, I bombed it, I'm embarrassed, can't even walk by him anymore. So sure enough, that night I'm leaving, and he was on the air on 93.9 The River broadcasting, and there was a big window in the hallway where you can see in and see out. So as I'm leaving, I'm like, oh God, he's on the air, and I'm doing like the, like walking by, and then he opens the door up, and he's like, hey, Dan, can I see you for 2 seconds? I'm like, shoot. I'm like, well, this isn't a job offer. Like, he wasn't even expecting to see me. So I go in, I'm like, hey, so I listened to your demo, and in my head I'm like, and I hated it, and you suck, and sorry about this, another time. I'm like, okay, and he goes, I hate to do this to you. I'm like, what, berate me because it was so horrible? And he goes, how do you feel about starting tonight? I was like, what? I'm like, starting, and I said to him, starting tonight what? Because I couldn't comprehend that he was actually saying, you're going to be on the, and he's like, starting on the air tonight. And I was like, starting on 93 on the River tonight? He's like, yeah. The job you applied for. I'm like, okay, yes, sure, okay, done. So boom, it started, and he's like, we're going to consider it a test run. We'll try you tonight, and I held that spot for 13 years on the air, getting moved around a bit, but that was my intro to the River, to mainstream radio. Eventually I got bumped up, I should say, to the afternoon drive. I was host of the afternoon drive for almost a decade. And 2019 rolled around, and I was loving life. I was like, yay, this is amazing. I still felt like I don't belong. I always feel like an outsider no matter where I am. To this day, I still feel I'm like, grace with your presence. When whoever it was interested me, I'm like, this is not a grace with your presence. I'm just a normal guy. I never believe any hype that people write about you. I don't do that, so I think that's a toxic thing. But anyway, very, very happy where I was. I had the best shift ever, 3 to 7, so I could party all night until like 2:30 in the morning. I didn't have to work till 3 p.m., and I was done at 6:40 at night. Like, that's the greatest shift in the world. I'm like, I am the luckiest person alive, and all I do is talk about music and go to shows, and I'm doing everything I always wanted to do. This amazing. And then Lynn Martin, who did the talk show on AM 800, she came into the studio with me one afternoon while I was on the air, and she goes, so, no one knows this yet, but I'm retiring. I thought, oh, and she goes, I think you would be a really good fit. You're a big voice in the community. And I would be on 800 now and then to comment on music or comment on little things that pertain to me. And she goes, people seem to like you. Would you consider applying for the job, the talk show host? It's a whole different ballgame from, it's not music. This is talk show. You're going to be giving opinions. You're going to have people who don't like you. You're not going to be the cool music guy anymore. You're going to have opinions about things, and you're allowed to give them because you're not news. You're a talk show host, so it's an opinion show. You're going to invite people on. It's going to be a whole different ballgame for you, but everyone thinks you would be a decent person to do it. I thought, oh boy. So I thought about it, and I said, I've given it some thought, and absolutely not. I'm not going to apply because I think it's so cozy and cushy where I am, and it was. I'm not doing it. And I started thinking more and more, and the deadline was coming up to apply. And I thought, no, I'm not the person. I'm the music guy. I don't think I can do talk radio. I have this great shift. I don't have to do a lot of prep work. I don't really have to challenge myself. Why aren't I challenging myself more? I love the job. I would do that forever. But I'm like, I don't know about this. That night, the night before the deadline to apply, I went to a concert at Masonic Temple in Detroit to see Massive Attack. And this reminds me, this is where it circles back to what Kristen Siapis said about the chalkboard that said, take that leap. So the whole show was wonderful. We had front row, dead center. Massive Attack has been one of my favorite bands since 1995. And I watched this whole show, and they have a huge visual arts component to it. And it was flashing film and words and really horrible images, really beautiful images. And the music was magical, and like the music was just vibrating through me. I know I sound flaky and hippie right now, but this is how I roll. And at the end of the show, it went black, and it was just this mighty triumphant finale. And again, this is like 11 p.m., the night before the deadline to apply. And then the words went black, the stage went black, and these big gigantic words came up that said, start imagining your future now. And like hovered, and then just dissolved. And I was like, oh my God, I'm applying for the job tomorrow. And I don't know what, I was so hell-bent, I'm not applying for the job. When I saw it, I was like, that's a sign I need to apply for this job. Something in my gut just told me, like when I walked into that studio as a copywriter and said, one day I might have that talk show job. It was this weird intuition thing. I don't believe in psychic stuff. I'm not like that kind of thing. But something told me apply for it. I did, and I got it. And it's been a roller coaster ride. It's been insane being a talk show host. Totally different. I got this job in November of 2019, so the Lynn Martin Show became the Dan Macdonald Show, which is very surreal to me because I listened to Lynn Martin for so many years on the air. I used to be a regular caller about different subjects she'd talk about. If anyone wasn't familiar, it's very similar to the show that I do now. You take the news stories and you have people calling in and giving their thoughts and whatnot. So I took the show on in November 2019. I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to be a local cheerleader. We're going to do a book club. We're going to have like film people come on. It's going to be the art show. I'm going to change the direction. It's going to be fun. The Dan Macdonald Show is going to be fun. Then COVID happened. And I was like, well, there goes the whole flippin' show. It literally got hijacked by COVID-19. You couldn't not talk about it. Like in, whatever it was, early March of 2020, I was just kind of getting my wheels turning with the show, getting my grounding. COVID happened, and like everything changed. The whole first hour of the show was the health unit. The whole last hour of the show was the federal government giving their dated messages every day back then. So I had 1 hour to talk about COVID-19 because we had to. So I had whoever would come on about it, people calling in. And it was a wild ride. It was horrible. I was broadcasting from home. I felt very, very disconnected. I kind of had that, oh my God, I made the worst decision ever. Why did I take this job? This is horrible. I mean, who could predict a pandemic was going to happen, and everything that happened. We all know what happened then. It all played out, and eventually went back to work and everything, at least I did. And it's challenging in a very different way. In a lot of ways now, I'm doing all the things I wanted to do with the show. I have a book club. I talk about fun things like this place all the time with roundtable guests, which I always wanted to do. So that's all coming back. But the way media is looked at now is way different. The biggest thing that I get, it's very, very difficult. You have to have a thick skin, and I do. But you still feel things. People don't realize the difference between news and talk. My show is a talk show. It's opinion. So I always say, hey, call me up with your opinion and share it, and people do. And people call in all the time who I don't agree with. Those are my favorite callers, if they're respectful. I've been called everything else, from fake news to paid off by the government. We're not a government, we're commercial radio. I don't get a government check. To every type of homophobic name you can possibly think of by people. When that happens, I hang up. You can tell me that you vote for the person I hate. You can tell me you believe this or that, and that's completely fine. That's cool. Don't disrespect me and don't disrespect other people on my show. And that's when I do become, I try not to be a diva, but I do get, the diva comes out when someone disrespects me. I'm like, hey, now you're on my show calling me a F word. I think we all know what word it is. And it's like, and I take pride in hitting that hang up button when that happens. Or if someone is just being completely disrespectful or belligerent or just not nice to listen to. And I think all the listeners are cheering, being like, Dan, hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up. And if anything, I let them go on a little bit too long, because when I do, people are like, yes, thank you for cutting that person off. But for the most part, it's been amazing. And I always say my motto in life is play to the love. And I love hearing different opinions that are different than mine, that challenge mine. I think that's the best part of it all. I love doing the fun stuff. Ultimately, I like to be a cheerleader for Windsor and places like this, and especially the creative arts and whatnot. Social equality is a big one for me. I love having diverse voices, giving platforms to people who don't always get a platform. That's something I take pride in. And when I hear people say, we love your show because you give a platform to voices that aren't normally heard, that's when I'm like, yes, that's what I will pay attention to, not people calling me a homophobic slur or fake news or whatever, like I'm shilling for Big Pharma, which I flunked chemistry, for Christ's sake. I don't know what Big Pharma is. So I don't even know what Big Pharma is. So that, you got to focus on the love, tough skin, but it's been so much fun. And I feel like this year especially, doing things like this and having people from places like this come on and talking to people doing movies. And I met George, who's doing a comic book, and that's, like, I like to pepper the show with people who are doing cool things and fun things. You still got to talk about the negative stuff and the crappy stuff that's going on. But I always say, hey, lines are open. This is what I think. You call in, tell me what you think. So it's an opinion show. We don't have to agree, but we can talk about it. And a lot of times, more often than you think, my opinion gets changed by people who call in respectfully and say, well, I disagree with you, Dan, because X, Y, Z. And I'm like, shoot, I never thought about it that way. That's really, really good. Now the wheels are turning and I'm gonna think about this. And that's the best, when you get that, like a different perspective. That's my favorite part of being in media, and you get to do really cool things too, I won't lie. Like, it's really fun. I still always buy tickets to things though, any kind of artist thing. People are like, oh, come for free. I'm like, no, I have to buy a ticket, because I can't be, oh, I'm gonna walk in and be for free. Do you know who I am? I've never ever been someone who's done that. I think because I've always been such an art nerd in my real life. Like, I've always went to the concerts and the plays and the poetry readings and taken part in those things. So when I know what it's like, I released a self-published poetry book back in 2005. And I know what it meant when somebody would buy my book. So I always say, if someone is doing something, I will pay to see your play or see your band or see your movie or help out any way I can, because it's important that we support each other in a community like Windsor. Like, we're small, everybody knows everybody, and we have a really cool scene. I hate seeing like division, especially among the arts community and people who are like city builders who are trying to make things better. I do a segment called City Building every Wednesday. We talk about what makes a good city, and it's always interlinked with the arts. Whether it's a mural on the wall that reclaims an alley and makes it not a creepy place, but a cool place to be. Whether it's bike lanes, whether it's film festivals, whether it's things like this. Love the arts being a promoter. But yeah, when Kristen was on the show today with Ryan and I on the round table, and she said that thing about take that leap, I thought that's really cool that her chalk sidewalk inspired someone to go apply for a job, because they looked at some writing in chalk on a sidewalk, and I thought, wow, I really only am on the radio because somebody snapped a photo of some girl and a picture that I didn't want to be in, and it ended up everywhere, and only in this position because I went to a Massive Attack concert. Like, that's literally how I got to where I am. I went to a Massive Attack show and saw this sign. I thought, ooh, I'm going to apply. I'm now inspired by the final words of their show. Had I looked away or had to go to the bathroom, I would have missed it and probably not applied. So it was just like, when Kristen said that today, I'm like, that's so full circle, how it's right place, right time. And every single thing you do, I didn't realize I was preparing for this job. Going out and watching all these concerts and partying very hard and talking to people and going to all these local music shows and doing volunteer radio. I didn't even realize, like, that was kind of me practicing for when I got a paid radio gig. Didn't even know. I'm like, why would you want me? Dan, you've been doing radio for 3 years. What? I have? No, I've just been doing CGEM. Oh yeah, that's radio. Like, I completely was clueless. So I was working the whole way to it, making connections, and it just happened right place, right time, and like, stroke of luck. Literally, a snapshot and a sign at a Massive Attack show was what got me to where I am, and all the little puzzle pieces in between. So it's a pretty cool story. Like, and I never really pieced it together until I was talking to Chris and Tim. Like, God, that's kind of how I got into radio. Right place, right time, I guess. The end. Does anyone have any questions?
That was amazing. That was amazing. So yeah, go questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Actually, the story, it's funny, but it's not true. But I believe that the Snapchat, the Snap, and the sign, it will not work with you if it didn't work on yourself from the beginning.
On which one?
This is,
Work on yourself from the beginning. It means the opportunity came to a lot of people.
Yes.
In different ways. But if you're not ready, you will not fit there.
That's very
and
true.
You were ready when this came.
That's
the true story. That you must work on ourselves to be ready when the opportunity came. Those just trigger things in our head. You try to be humble, but we're ready to this opportunity when it's come.
Right.
And shape of picture or sign or whatever is it. But if you're not ready, you will not be here. It's not a coincidence to be someone. It's a hard work to be someone.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so true.
Because as you told us, you were 6 years old when you start your passion about the music.
Kind of, yeah.
From 6 years old to this opportunity, it's a long way, a lot of hard work, Just I want to say, like, for everybody and for myself, just be ready when opportunity knock on your door. Don't sit in your ass, do nothing.
we agree.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. At first, like, that's not true. Like, what do you mean it's not true? No, you're absolutely right.
Being ready and then being open to something that inspires you to be the sign.
Yes, that's what it was. That's
We don't
exactly what it
open the
was.
signs either.
Yep, you're so right. You're so right.
Other questions? That was really great, by the way. You're going to be the MC at our conference in the fall.
Sure, okay.
100%. Only you.
Are you sure about that? No.
Yeah, I'm sure.
What years were you at the university radio?
I was at the university from 2000 until 2005. Until 2005.
I was there 92, 94, somewhere in there.
Oh, cool. CGM is awesome.
Also at Sheridan College radio station, too.
Oh, cool. Sweet. Did you enjoy CGM?
Yeah, a lot. I had friends. We co-hosted a show called World Peas.
Oh, cool.
Like, little peas.
Oh, like peas? Like the
Yeah, but
okay.
It was World Beat because nobody else was covering world music, and it was a lot more interesting than just your favorite songs, and we caused trouble and stuff too. But
oh yeah, CJAM was great for that. I always recommend everyone, like, if you want to get into radio, start in CJAM, because get in there and
Did you know a person named Luke Paulette?
Who's that?
Luke Paulette from CJAM.
Oh, the name sounds so familiar. I'd probably know a face. I'm terrible with names.
I did an interview with him from CJAM Radio and Emilio Vaz from Digital Revolution Radio.
Oh, cool. I know Revolution, Radio Revolution.
Luke
Yeah, I know
is
that
the
one.
really
At the
super
time.
tall drummer that you see in that band,
Yes.
that Fog.
Fog, yes.
Oh, that's who that is.
That's who he's talking
Oh, I
about. He
totally
works
know
at
who. Yes,
Chrysler.
yes. Now I know who
Yeah,
that
he
is.
works at
Okay.
Chrysler.
Okay. Yeah.
I did an interview with him too. That was good.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, CJAM opened up so many doors that I didn't even know were being opened. To me, it was just me having fun on the radio.
So two things. So I used to be a longtime caller with Lynn Martin.
Yeah.
But the thing was for me is that I was always scared to say my name. So my best friend's dad growing up worked at Chrysler, and his name was Billy. So I used to always call up and say, "This is Billy." So nobody really ever knew when I was calling. And so I never really got a response from anybody because nobody knew because I was anonymous. But when Dan came out, I kind of came out of that shell. And I remember I even sent you an email introducing myself.
I remember that.
When Lynn Martin retired.
Yeah.
And I started introducing myself as Justin
Yeah.
and coming on the show.
That's funny.
And it's funny because when I go to work at Chrysler, people come up to me and say, "So, talking about parenting and beating your kids today, huh? I was listening to you on Dan today." It's like so funny when I realize how many people, listen to the show because it has a huge outreach.
It does.
Huge outreach.
That was a weird mind, for me too. The river was cool. I get recognized at shows, but here it's like I will I've never seen anything like it. Like I'll go buy like a card at the Hallmark store and be like, here you go. And they're like, are you Dan from the radio? It's like, oh my God, like, that's crazy. Like that blows my mind. I forget, especially, a couple years there, I was broadcasting in my bedroom during the pandemic when the show was just picking up, and you really didn't realize how many people were listening. I didn't anyway. I was naive, and I'm the kind of person, when I shut off the radio and I'm done work, I'm done work. Like I leave it there and I just walk out and let it go until I'm back into it. And just being in my house, like I'd have my microphone, I'd be doing this radio show, and it was done, like I'd turn it off, there was no leaving work, and like my cat would hop off my lap and I'd go change her litter box, and like I'd forget, like, oh yeah, you just did 3 hours in the #1 station in Windsor, Essex. Like it was very easy to forget because I was just in my house. It might as well have been me talking in my basement, and there weren't a lot of callers because there wasn't time for callers because it was COVID-19. And then when I came back and the show kind of opened up and COVID kind of started going away a bit, I was like, oh my God, people actually listen? I was like, of course they listen. What did you think, Dan? This is right. So it kind of blew my mind a little bit too, and I don't like to think about that often because it messes with my head too much.
The other thing.
Yeah.
So I went to a self-help seminar for like executives and things like that, salespeople, things like that, and they were talking about people that were successful and saying that life is a series of coincidental things. And like I like to use like Mike Tyson as an example. And he says, if I didn't grow up in the gutter, I wouldn't have gone to juvie. If I wouldn't have gone to juvie, I wouldn't have met my first coach. If I wouldn't have met my first coach, I wouldn't have went to jail. If I wouldn't have went to jail, I wouldn't have met my real coach. And if I wouldn't have met my real coach, I wouldn't have been the youngest heavyweight champion of the world.
Wow. Yeah.
So do you feel that you are at that, you know what I mean, that those series of events have led up to now, like you're at where you're at and that's where you're going to stay?
Kind of. Well, a little twist even to the whole, like, seeing that massive attack sign. When I wasn't going to apply, then I did, and I got the job. And I was ready. I was like, I love the river. Why would I want to leave the river? This is the best gig ever. But I'll take the talk show host. Got that, and then a year later, they fired everybody on the radio station I was at. And I would have been out the door, too. It was just a whole Bell Media, because I was hired by Chum, but Bell Media took us over. Bell Media did a call, and they got rid of 89X, which was heartbreaking, and they got rid of 93 on the River, which was heartbreaking. That was like my home base. So I was like, holy moly, like I didn't even, people were like, did you know, is that why you jumped ship? I'm like, I did not know, like I really didn't know. I did not know that was going to happen. And I was like, oh, I got to jump ship before it sinks, I'm out of here. No, it was not that at all. I was even like, maybe I'll go back. Like during COVID, I was like, I hate this COVID crap. I want to go back to the river. I was actually devising a plan of how I can get back on the river. Then they closed it down. It's a Virgin Radio now, and it's 93 on Virgin Radio, and it's lovely. It's great. It's sad that what happened, but yeah, that little thing also kind of kept me in the game too. Like that, taking that job, right, I didn't realize it was giving me another little lifeline to stay in it.
Coincidence.
Otherwise, yeah, it's coincidence, but it was right place, right time. And back to what he said, it's like you do have to be ready to do it as well when the coincidences are there. Like Mike Tyson, all those little stepping stones that maybe he didn't even know were stepping stones at the time were stepping stones, but he was also ready to take the step too, right? He could lift himself up to take that step, so that part was on him. But yeah, I love what you said about that, adding that. But yeah, I do kind of feel that way a lot.
Now I have a question.
Yes.
And now we know, like, especially new generation, I have a son, he's 16, or when I ask him about the movie or any shows, that, yeah, I saw it on TikTok, I saw it on Instagram, it's about this and that. It's like, no, it's deeper than that. Just spend 1 hour with me to watch a decent movie. No, I know everything about this movie, you know? How you think, in your opinion, those new ways of now AI will come, also change a lot of things, can affect mainstream media, like the classic or old way media that nobody spend, now who's watching YouTube, like old fashioned, man, you spend like half an hour on YouTube.
No, I know. It has a huge effect. Like I love all that stuff. I do like all that stuff.
It's really a question for us.
Yeah.
How we can approach a new generation.
I think you got to. Someone said something to me: get on the train or get run over by it, or be left behind. So, AI, like it's insane what you can do with it. It blows my mind. But like I think they're tools that we have to embrace and learn how to use just to advance everything. That's how I feel about even new media and social media. And I don't know. For me, it's like I'm just kind of going with the flow with everything that happens, and I try to stay up on all that stuff. I do, but I think I'm up to date on it for the most part. I talk about it every day. AI and social media. Social media has 100% changed my job. I know that much, because now it's what's said in the comments and what's in real life and what's said on the radio. Very, very different things. Like online is a whole other different world. And I've seen the people online, and then you meet them in public and they won't say anything to your face, and I'm not really an intimidating person. Like, I'm really not scary in real life. So, and people are always like, it's like online, like, I have something to say to you. And then when you meet them in real life, they're like, well, I kind of disagree with what you said about something. Like, oh, that's fine. That's cool to disagree. It's completely okay. Like, totally. Death threatening me and calling me horrible names, not okay. But if we want to talk about something, that's cool. But very different worlds. But I do think they do affect each other in a huge way. It's different. The Lynn Martin show, there was no social media when she used to do her show. So that was like the social media. It was just a different medium. It was radio. So everybody, rather than post about it on Facebook, they call in. So she always had loaded lines. So that's been different because everybody texts into my show. And I have hundreds and hundreds of texts every day, but we're kind of discouraged to read them. I do read them, but they say don't read all of them because you want to have people calling in. So really ask people to call in, but it's way easier to do this than to dial up and call in, and you can be more anonymous on your phone too. So it's changed in a big way, but you just got to keep up with it.
What about your radio waves? Like, can you reach Detroit? Can you reach Chatham? Like, how far?
Oh yeah, it goes really, really far. We get people. We were just talking about this yesterday. We did a wine tour with a bunch of AM 100 listeners, and we'll get people emailing us all over the world sometimes. Like, some person heard us out in Sudbury. One person picked us up somehow in, like, I want to say like Norway or something. Like, which is insane. But yeah, we have a huge reach in all of Detroit. It's still like that 50,000 watt blowtorch. Chatham, Kent. It'll sometimes go out to London. If you're driving in, you kind of stay tuned in, it'll go out there. But it kind of starts to fade after you get out of Chatham. But it goes all over a pretty significant part of.
Is it by Detroit or no?
No, we don't. No, it's pretty. Not that I know, because we get Detroit callers all the time. We talk about a lot of Detroit issues, so we get callers. Hey, I'm calling from Ohio. I'm calling from here. So we get pretty big Detroit listenership.
So let's do 3 more questions.
Sure.
Jason?
There are websites that will rebroadcast live.
A lot of people stream too. They will stream us instead of listening on the
Like
radio.
that guy in Norway, for example,
Yeah.
could have been listening via a website.
Totally could have been. Yeah. Terrestrial radio it's a strange thing. I love it so much. That's what I grew up on. But yeah, we get people all over the world listening to us, which is cool.
Hi.
Hey.
Good to see you. What are 2 interviews or that you were nervous for, or like, okay, I'm gonna interview so and so who is huge, like huge legend? What was your first legend meeting? Who was it? Was there a person that was like, oh my god, I admire this person, I'm gonna stutter when I get on the air? Like, who's a famous person you've
Geekily enough, I don't know if this might not be as like, it was a big deal to me. She came on my radio show just last year. You ever remember like Much Music? Like Much Music, the nation's music station kind of thing, was a video show. And one of my favorite VJ on the show, Erica M. I don't know if anyone remembers Erica M. She helped shape my musical taste. Like, I just loved her music, and she came on my show. I know she's not a huge star, but to me it was a huge deal, and I was like, oh my god, like, Erica M. is coming on my show. Like, I can't believe this. Literally the next week, I had Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the show, and I didn't even care. And in his intro, I was like, I'm interviewing all the legends. I interviewed Erica M. last week, and now we got Justin. That was my intro to the freaking Prime Minister. And I was still geeked about Erica M.
Justin.
And after the interview with him, I literally tweeted out, because when I said Erica M., he's like, oh my god, Dan, I love Erica M. too. He liked her too. So I tweeted, because I'm a nerd, I tweeted Erica M. I was like, hey, the Prime Minister talked about you on the air too. And she's like, what? So I'm like, yes, she's paying attention to me now. And she's like, can you show me the interview where he talks? I'm like, here it is. Then Erica M. retweeted. I was like, I'm in heaven. Like, and then I was like, I also just interviewed the Prime Minister, but I'm more geeked than Erica M. Like, he mentioned Erica M. So Erica M. was actually the big one that I was nervous for. Alanis Morissette, that was really cool. Green Day, interviewed Green Day. I got to introduce Alanis Morissette too at her show.
Nice.
That was crazy because I introduced small bands, but Alanis was playing at the Palace, and when you walk out, like, you don't realize you walk out and you're like, okay, I see this big mass of people, but then when you get out from under the lights, you're like, and there's people like up here, like all looking down, and when you're the person, like, no one knows who the hell I am, I'm just a frickin' Windsor radio guy, but when I walked out, because they knew like, ooh, this guy coming out means Alanis is coming out, I got met with that like, wow, like crowd thing, and like that was like knocking me over, so I'm like, damn, like, And this isn't even for me. They're just excited because it's her. So that was really cool. The biggest flub interview I can tell you was Pat Pentland from Sloan, the band Sloan. And I was a big Sloan fan. I was doing this broadcasting live from the Fillmore, Detroit. We were doing a river show. We call it Icebreaker. And the lineup was Sam Roberts, Our Lady Peace, and Sloan. And I was familiar with Our Lady Peace and Sloan. I didn't know a whole lot about Sam Roberts at the time. He was just starting to kind of break out here. So they came down and they said, hey, all the bands want to do interviews with you. Are you cool with that? I said, yeah, just send them on down. Great. And I was like, oh, Sam Roberts, I'm so nervous about him. I know nothing about him. Our Lady Peace comes down. They were great. Sam Roberts comes down. And I was like, shit. He was lovely. He's like the nicest human being in the world. It was a great interview. One of my favorite interviews. He just talked and was fun. It was great. And I was like, and now Sloan, I am so ready for this because I know Sloan. I've known them since I was a kid. This is going to be smooth sailing. So Pat Pentland from Sloan came down, and I was ready because I'm a fan. And I was like, this is going to be the best. We're going to be friends after this. He was the worst interview ever. He hated me for whatever reason. Everything was like a one-word answer. Like I was like, tell me about your time with this. It was great. What about this? Yeah, no. 10 questions, all yep, no, yep, no. I'm like, okay, Dan, maybe change direction. So I knew he had a side project, a side punk project that didn't get any radio play. I'm like, well, you know, I also know you do a punk band. Like, tell me a bit about that. I thought maybe that'll lighten him up. Like, I'm actually invested. I know him. I'm like, tell me about your punk side project. Him, it's a side punk project. I'm like, alrighty. And keep in mind, there's people watching me. So I'm dying. It's on the air and I have an audience. I was like, okay. And had it been recorded or had there not been people there, I literally would have been like, dude, you don't have to do this. Like, if you hate it so much, it's cool. We don't have to. I'm only doing it because it's my job, and you guys asked. Like, send someone else. So I couldn't do that because it was live and there were people there. So I'm like, okay, on that note, we'll play the Sloan song. Come down to the Fillmore tonight and see them. Boom. And then he just walked away kind of thing. And I was like, oh, horrible, horrible, horrible. And a few fans came up to me after, and you're always going to take the side of the rock star over the douchey DJ, even though I wasn't douchey. But you're always going to take the rock star. He's the well-known guy they came to see. And a few of the fans stuff, they're like, what was up with him? Like, what the heck was that all about? Like, that was like, dude, did he not like, what an ass. And I was like, I know, thank you, my God. So that kind of showed me, don't get too cocky. Not that I got cocky, but I wasn't worried about it. I was like, oh, this will be a piece of cake because I know him. And the one that I was worried about, that I actually put effort into, was Sam Roberts, and that one went swimmingly well. You know what I mean? So it kind of taught me a lesson like, hey, don't ever think I got this because it's live radio and anything can happen.
You must be ready.
Oh, yeah. It was terrifying and heartbreaking.
Also, Dave.
Okay, last question. Sorry.
If you could change your radio name, what would you change it to? Like a different name.
I've thought about this, and they asked me to do this in the beginning. Like they said, what name do you want to go by? And I was like, I have to pick a name now. Like, and I was thinking of all these like they sounded like porn star names. All the names. I'm like, no, that sounds like porn. That sounds like porn. Like, can't do that. And I, you know what? I don't know. I wish I knew. If it was like the 89X days, I probably would have done like a. Don't laugh.
Come on.
This is gonna make you vomit.
We've done shows together.
In the 1990s, had I been like an 89X DJ, I probably would have been like D-Mac or something like that. Or like Danny Mac or something. That would not work on AM 800, but like if it was 89X and things were a bit more like punkish and it was the 1990s and D-Mac would have been a bit cooler. Keep in mind, my boss was named Fat Matt, so there was that. I probably would have been like a D-Mac or something like that, but yeah.
If you ran a show, your home radio show, and you wanted to have the ultimate band in your show play an interview, who would it be?
Oh God, asking me that? That is like so many, like all of the above. Right now, if I had to have anybody who is current, I would probably have somebody either gigantic and iconic, like a huge pop star like Madonna or Beyonce or Taylor Swift, or not even that I'm a fan, I just love to talk to them, but a band, if it was my own personal thing, I would have this psychedelic band done called the Flaming Lips, who are actually coming to town. They put on the greatest show that I've ever seen in my entire life.
When are they coming?
And they're coming late July or early August, and if you haven't seen this band,
Flaming
it's like
Lips.
the Flaming Lips. They've been around since the 80s.
Punk?
But no, they're like an alternative experimental, but I consider them the Willy Wonka of alternative rock.
It's a fun concert.
It's like being at, the only way I can describe it, Times Square, stroke of midnight for 3 solid hours.
I saw
It's phenomenal.
them and Ween.
Oh,
I was so
amazing.
excited to see Ween. This is in Berkeley.
Yeah.
And They were so disappointing.
Green ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Flaming
But
Lips,
then
I take it, blew
The
you away.
Flaming Lips was like outrageous
Yeah.
and lots of fun.
It's like you're at a like they dump confetti and glitter on you for 3 hours, and I didn't even really know them that well. And I went to see Sonic Youth who were opening. I was like, oh, Sonic Youth. Sonic Youth was like, oh, cool. Then Flaming Lips came out. And we were actually gonna go. We were up close, and I'm like, if Flaming Lips suck, we'll just leave, and because I don't really care if I see them or not. 2 songs in, my friend's like, well, and I'm like, you could not drag me out of here. This is the greatest production I've ever seen in my life. It was all positivity. That's who I'd have on be Flaming Lips. Wink, wink. Hey, thank you very much
For having you, sharing your experiences, and please add and subscribe to my channel, Plug and Play Productions. Thank you.